Morgan, we are back at home, and are you excited?
I'm so excited. That little Boston impromptu show for everyone who joined us on Friday was great. It was fun, filled with hot takes, I might add. And
A
I
little
think we
spicy.
might get something similar today. I think we might get some more hot takes today, and I'm excited for that.
Me too. It was interesting as we were talking about doing the show, and we were going back and forth about our experiences about onboarding, and all I kept thinking about is, what is onboarding? Because every time I started at a company, they threw me at the wall. Like I posted this morning, literally, they throw you at the wall, see what sticks. No training, no support. Either you make it or you're done. And so it's going to be really exciting today to shine a light on what good onboarding can look like and what happens when somebody takes a very, what do you want to say, like a proactive approach to going through this. And we've seen that with whether it's faster ramp, whether it's even just retention of good reps. So, and you picked two incredible people for this show.
Well, it's funny. Onboarding is such a, I think it's like one of the things, everybody talks about sales tactics. Everybody's like, oh, here's what you need to do in the market. And I kept on thinking about like, well, how do you do this at a team? How do you replicate it? How do you scale it? How do you do this with more than just one superstar rep? And I am so thrilled for our guest today for this conversation. So please welcome Christine Rogers and Zoë Hartsfeld to join us for this conversation. Yay!
Hi.
Hi. Oh, by the way, if you're here watching the show live, you should drop a hi in chat because we'd love to see you and we'd love to say hi to you. Thanks for joining today.
We're excited to be here. Yep, we're going to have a good time, I think.
If our pre-call was any indication of the kind of conversation we're going to have today, I think we're on the right track.
I agree.
So does somebody have a question of the day just to ask our audience? Any fun questions just to warm up chat to get people going and understand, hey, it's live, it's their hour as much as ours. Do you have a question of the day?
I have a question.
Okay.
Do you put on your shoes and socks? Sock, shoe, or sock, shoe? Like, is there a proper order to put on? Like, do you go like left foot sock, left foot shoe, right foot sock, right foot shoe? Do you just say, screw it, you don't wear socks? Like, what is the order of operation there?
I've never thought about that as...
I was about to say, that's such a good question.
I think about it every day.
It's fair.
You do? Do you change it up?
No.
I think
I
don't think I have one way.
You probably do. You probably have a habit and you've just never once thought about it. But you probably have like a very specific. So Chance puts his on sock, shoe. And I do sock, shoe. And I didn't realize that was weird till like this week.
I am a sock, shoe person. I usually always wear socks. I don't know. Like our place is fairly chilly through the winter, so I usually have like socks on anyways. And then like if I go out, then it's shoe. But I've never considered sock, shoe.
It's like you're rocking shorts and you're not wearing shoes.
You do sock, shoe, Christine?
Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, I go sock, shoe.
The same. That is very weird. Thank you.
That's a good question. That was a really good question.
I'm with
Nick?
Brady.
Yeah.
I can't, like, I feel uncomfortable without socks on. So it's like socks, pants, and then the socks just don't come off until the end of the day. Like, I don't know if I could do bare feet. I would. Canada's too cold for that.
Yeah.
That's true. If you were living somewhere more temperate, maybe it would be, sockless.
Well, it's like when we were in Boston, they're like, yeah, the water's so nice. Like, you can jump in. I'm like, water nice? Like, it's not cold and it doesn't hurt? Like, that's a thing?
It's a strange idea.
What?
Oh, that's great. Well, Nick, shall we get started today? Where do you want to kick us off?
I was thinking about this. Do we want to start with problems or do we want to go and talk about why onboarding is needed?
Ooh, let's do problems, then we can do the why.
Sure. So when it comes to onboarding and doing this properly, really taking it and making it an experience, what makes it fall apart more often than not? Who'd like to take the lead?
You want to go? What do you think? Joey, do you want to go first, or do you?
Well, Christine, okay, I feel like you've actually like designed onboarding programs before. I've just been on the receiving end of onboarding programs and have worked for a company that specializes in like onboarding solutions. So I'm curious to hear like from somebody who built onboarding programs, what do you think goes wrong with most of them?
I think most of them are not built intentionally with like outcomes in mind. The only outcome that people are thinking about is ramp reps. And there's a lot more in the way of success outcomes that we're looking for besides just how quickly can we get to quota. And so I think while that is the ultimate outcome, is we want them to ramp well, we want them to ramp quickly and have a good understanding of the job, the role, the company, the product, all of those things. I think it's about taking a step back. And the biggest problem is I think we try to rush everything to get it done really quickly so we can check the box and then feel like, oh, we did it. And if it doesn't work, then it's a personal problem of the rep, rather than taking a step back and going, have we created it in a way that can make more people successful, and not just throwing things at them and saying, if they don't get it, it's their problem.
I think for me, one, just like lack of onboarding in general has been my biggest struggle. I think a lot of like earlier stage startups, and I've even worked at like not an early stage startup, had been around for 15 years, where ramp or onboarding was like a week, and it was super outdated, designed by somebody a year and a half ago. Half the systems that I was learning in these like long trainings and videos, we didn't even use anymore. And so I was like, hey, like I'm trying to log into SalesLoft. Can you help me? I can't seem to find it. He's like, oh, we don't even use SalesLoft anymore. We use Outreach. We haven't used SalesLoft in 3 months. And it's like nobody had updated the onboarding. So I spent 3 hours watching videos about a tool that we do not use. There was no training for the tool that we did use. Right. And like that was just my experience as a brand new SDR in tech, like trying to learn. So I think my biggest thing that I've struggled with is like lack of onboarding in general, lack of care, lack of attention to that process, but also like just philosophically people approaching onboarding as like a destination as opposed to like a process or ongoing journey. Like something we say at SpecEd is everboarding. Like you're never really fully done learning your job. You're learning on the job constantly. You're always evolving. You're always getting better. And so when we think of onboarding as like, how quickly can we get this rep on the phone and producing? And to Christine's point, like it's about ramp. It's not about like learning the customer, learning like where the job could take you in a couple of years, learning the company. I think that is like a real pitfall that people fall into. And I remember being a rep and they were like, we want you on the phones by day 3. And I was practicing on real prospects, and we probably lost a couple decent opportunities because I didn't know what I was doing, talking to real inbound leads who wanted our service. And they were like, we'll just like throw Zoe at them and see what happens. And I think there was like a better way to do that. But I also learned by, doing and failing. So like, it's like you go either side of that coin.
That's interesting too, because it's like, are we over prioritizing on the job learning compared to like more structured environments? I don't know if structured environments is like the right way to talk about onboarding, but it's sort of like this classic symptom. As somebody who was never a seller really, and more on the marketing end, it's fascinating to see teams sort of just, not to be rude, but like, as Nick said, throw people at the wall and see what happens. And I wonder how much of that is like, it creates like a poor learning environment, or even if there's some benefit, do the costs to the company sort of outweigh that? I mean, that's like an interesting problem that seems companies are continuing to navigate.
I think about like checking the check boxes. Ours was like sales tech. This is how you go and do your admin. This is how you go and this is the CRM we use. This is the miscellaneous sales tech with no workflow to make it work. But here you go. And then it's like, and this is our product. I remember spending 2 weeks on product. And I could tell you every useless detail about that product that wasn't relevant to a customer And then you go out to talk to customers and you're like, I know nothing about you. I know nothing that's going on in the industry. I know what your company name is and I know how many people work there, but nothing relevant to have a conversation. And looking back, I realized that what a disservice that was. And Christine, you had a really great story about this in our pre-call.
Yeah. So I think I had been in different companies that looked at this differently, right? So I was in a very culturally rich company that took company onboarding extremely seriously. And then we had no real sales enablement function at that point. So the company onboarding was extremely robust about, what are we about? What are our values? What, et cetera, all these things. And it was great because then we really took time to understand the customer. But then when we, they were like, okay, good. And then kind of gave them over to the sales department. And then we were like, ooh, all right, what needs to happen? So for a while, we had no functional enablement, per organization or team. So we had to really figure out what are the things that we need to work on here, and how is that, how are we going to deliver that? So we really kind of do think all of it. Now the company, and in a minute, but the company that I went to after full company. So when I start, what's our plan here for the sales team? It was, what do you mean? We're going to need to build this as well. So I took it and did also a company onboarding and started creating that. And so had the experience of creating that as well. What I have learned is I think there are a couple of places where you can focus. So I think you have to focus on the company. Absolutely. Who are you? Who are you on the world? What are we trying to accomplish? What is the mission and the vision of what we're trying to do? So I think that's really important that everybody knows that, because they need to opt in or out. There could be a mistake that happens here, and they should have the opportunity to understand very early on, if they missed it in the hiring process, who are we collectively, and also select out quickly if that's not going to work for you. My previous company that I was talking to a moment ago, they offered everyone money to leave at the second half of the week. So they just said, if you're in, if you're not, you're not. We'll pay you on your way out. And so very Zappos and so I know a lot of others do that as well. So with that, I think it's company that you need to really deep dive into your customer. And so I think that's the second part that's so important before we get into solutioning and product and what we sell. So I think spending time on the customer is critical.
I think about being a rep and onboarding, and we spent no time understanding our customer or the personas within our customer. Early days, I sold a video software. So we sold to everybody. And my success really turned a corner when I had a 1-to-1 AE SDR alignment, and my AE just on his own accord decided to go after one specific vertical. So he dove into, this is who mortgage companies and real estate companies are. And I'm going to teach you everything there is to know about our customer, and you're going to come on these calls with me and you're going to learn. And so he took it upon himself to teach me. And everything changed from that moment on. I was so much more, not to say intelligent, but I sounded more intelligent in our conversations. I could actually provide value to these people because I understood their day-to-day. I understood the problems they were solving. And I actually understood how our product helped them, Joe, the mortgage solutions guy, versus just how does video help people in general. And I think that's a huge miss that a lot of people skip over in onboarding, is this is how you do your job, not this is who we serve. And I think dedicating time to who you serve really helps me as the rep understand the why behind what I'm doing. Why am I making these cold calls? Why am I sending these emails? Why am I structuring it this way? Oh, it's because so-and-so on the other end of this call needs help with XYZ, and I know that we can deliver that. And it just changes your confidence. It changes the way that you talk to prospects, and actually helps you have a business conversation instead of just pitch blindly, and then when you get an objection that you haven't heard before, you're like, that wasn't in the script. Like, I don't know what to do next. Like, yeah.
It's interesting because Josh Braun had come on the show a couple weeks ago now, I think, or last week. Gosh. And he had talked a lot about like problem prospecting, like actually knowing the problem is that key sort of strategic level to being very effective on outbound. And it's interesting to hear how often that is a miss when it comes to onboarding or even everboarding and this ongoing training conversation, because you get so focused, as Saif had said in the chat, on like product features instead. That's a really problematic miss. Nick,
the other thing
you
I
opened
think
your
is
mouth.
super important.
Christine.
No.
No, it's okay. Okay. You know, one other thing is that even if we think we know who we serve, sometimes it's because we're now looking at it with fresh eyes. You need to take another look. So one of the things that we did at one of my prior companies was on that second day when we were really doing a deep dive into our customers and who we serve, we actually, and predominantly we served like salons, spas, and small businesses that many of us have been to before. So what we did is we said, we're going to do it in the morning, and then we're going to actually give you, we gave them money, like cash in an envelope, and said, we want you to go and have a service done at one of our, we just learned about them this morning, at one of our prospects or a customer. And we want you to take this information, a worksheet. Because of course, maybe you've gotten a massage before, but you've never walked in and really paid attention to the workflow behind the counter, or receiving you, or how they're checking you in. You've never looked at it with that lens. So we actually had them do a service and then report, like write down everything they learned. And then the next day we invited anybody from the company that wanted to come, and they did a 3-minute presentation on what they learned. And at first, it was just our onboarding people, a couple of the managers, maybe, for the different teams that were there. But after a while, this became something that the entire company, especially our product and engineering team, they started coming to it and listening. Like, what were the problems that they were seeing, or the issues that were going on for our customers, and we still weren't seeing them, maybe, or how are they solving it? Because a lot of times you find out that people are solving a problem with a hack, like a workaround, rather than, and then you can come back and say, like, man, the way that they had me check in was really crappy, and here's what happened, and so it's fascinating. So doing that allowed us to be able to really hone in on our customer in a new way. And also they loved it, thought it was so fun. They like had that experience and really thought about it. And that, I think, if you can ever have your new people meet a customer or go to their place of business, or talk to them and say, like, I'd love to know everything, can I interview you, or anything like that, so that you really, if you can be in their space, you understand them a little differently and have a different view than you might have originally going into the company.
I think of how that would have changed early conversations in my career, having that knowledge, because that was the worst part. Well, back in the day, God, that makes me feel old. But back in the day, it wasn't phone calls and emails. It was, we were driving out and door knocking. And so it's even more embarrassing when you're standing in front of someone and you don't know what you're talking about. But thinking about, if I would have had this training, how that would have completely changed the conversations I was able to have. And even if I was handing it off to an AE, how much better I could prep them for that opportunity, because I know those problems. So I can actually qualify in that conversation, but make it natural, not the stumble. Hey, this is the greatest product feature, and you're going through the feature list, and the guy's like looking to, I got to leave now. But even think, Morgan, too, like, how would that have changed the content that you've created over the years and the websites?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of sort of other fold-in things. One thing that actually kind of pops up for me as we're discussing this is like how there seems to be a balance or a conversation about like an initial onboarding time and then somewhat of like the ongoing job training. So for both of you, what does that look like? Like what does that initial onboarding period, how long should that last? And what really should be a focus of that initial versus what actually happens maybe over the first 12 months that they're on the job?
I mean, it probably really depends. Like, I can't imagine there's like a silver bullet, like onboarding needs to be, I mean, maybe somebody's done a study and they're like, it needs to be 67.5 days. And that's like the perfect time. But I would imagine it really depends on like the sales cycle or your role. Like if you're not even in sales, onboarding might need to look really different. But I know at SpecHit, we have like company-wide like 30-day sort of onboarding. So it's like your first month, but then you've a ramp period of another like 3 to 6 months, depending on like the sales cycle that you own. But we also really have this culture of what we call everboarding. And it's creating a culture of curiosity, always being learning, and customer obsession. And so one thing that like I do, and kind of to the question, Nick, that you asked Morgan, like, how does it affect your content? I don't work in sales, but I work very closely with our sales team. And this is actually an idea I got from Christine, is I listen to customer calls and win-loss calls for about 45 minutes, 3 days a week. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, my morning when I'm checking email, I'm just like going into Chorus and I'm listening to a call, whether it's a discovery call, whether it's like a negotiation call, like I'm just picking a random call from a rep. Sometimes I'll in advance ask reps for calls that they think are good, but I also kind of just want to hear how we're talking on the calls we don't think are good. Like, what is everybody saying? What are the prospects saying? And really just trying to continuously learn. So for that, like, I don't think my onboarding will ever be done. I'm 9 months into this role and I'm still learning a ton about our space as our product evolves, as our goals as a company evolve, like not even just like onboarding my role, but like the business. How is the business being run? Is that changing? Like, I think that we need to shift learning from this destination to like a practice. Like learning and onboarding is this ongoing, ever evolving thing. So I think that's like a shift that I hope we see in the market and more companies do. As I mean, we work in SaaS. The space is changing so much. The talk track we used 6 months ago is almost null and void today because of what happened in the macroeconomic environment. And so we've changed a lot of how we sell to adapt, and we'll change it again when the market changes again. So I think just like always being on your toes, always being curious, and having leadership who's willing to continue to invest in that learning and training is really important.
There was a comment a little bit ago on that, which prompts an interesting question, which is like, oh yeah, Dale had said most of them are not updated regularly enough. So like who should own this? Like, and especially in sales, there's like an interesting dynamic I see as an outsider, which is that obviously sales management sort of deals with the day-to-day of the individual sellers. But then in many companies, there's enablement teams or there's other functions, there's HR obviously, and there's other functions that also support indirectly these sellers to be effective. So who should own onboarding, as particularly in the long haul, and like continuing to update that information for sellers? Christine?
Depends on how big the company is and what resources. So are you guys getting me okay? Because sometimes it's a little choppy. I'm just making sure. We're good? Okay.
You're a little choppy.
All
It's
right.
fine.
So
keep on going for it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to keep rolling. I'm just going to keep rolling. Okay, so I think it depends on how big the company is. In general, I believe the sales leader needs to take ownership of the sales training. So if that's enablement that rolls into sales, that works, as well. A lot of times the company onboarding is more centralized, which I think is a great approach as well. So it would work hand in hand in that case. But like ultimately, it's the sales leader's job to make sure that the right information is getting to the team, it's being adjusted, and it's being tuned, regularly. An enablement team, you would be working with that team to make sure that they are representing the things and training new people and doing additional, ongoing trainings in the way that you want them done. So I would say ultimately, as the sales leader, I believe it's my job to make sure my team is up to date. And that means I'm working with another team to make sure that happens. I believe that that's really, really important to make sure that's. So that's more where I'm talking about organizational training, so if it's marketing team, if it's, customer success, that team, those types of trainings generally live in like an enablement function. And then company trainings generally live in like a centralized location. If you're a very small team, it's all you as the sales leader and your sales management and your leaders. You need to be doing that. And I had small companies as well where I would have different managers own different pieces of things. So not everybody had to do one thing, or not, I didn't have to do the other. So we kind of, divide and conquer on that when it was a smaller team.
I think like for us, we sort of have a cheat because our product is designed for just-in-time learning, onboarding, and enablement. So baked into it, which I kind of love because it was based out of like learning science. Baked into it, you have, experts who are creating the content, and that could be anybody who owns that subject. It lives in a centralized location that you can always search, but we have reactions. So I can read a spec or like a card of training or something like that in my product and read it about, let's say, like we have a new way to update Salesforce, and somebody sent me that information. I read through it and I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me. I can react to it and say, this is confusing. It'll automatically generate an email where I can give that feedback to the content creator. And it is now a closed and recurring feedback loop so that people can say, to your point, if I look at a training and it's outdated, I can say, this is outdated, get updated. So there's ownership on me as the person who saw it, but then that feedback goes straight to the content creator. They update it and it updates in real time. So I think it's like, regardless of how you do it, creating systems of ownership where it's like, if you see something, say something. And then whoever owns that content, like when I was onboarding as a new SDR 2 companies ago, and it was like, hey, so like, how do I log into this tool? And he's like, we don't use that tool anymore. I then 6 weeks later, when we were about to onboard a new person, I was like, I don't really know what we're doing, but can I just like record a video for her on outreach because we don't have one? And he was like, yeah, do you want to do that? And then like swap it in for the training. I was like, I don't think I'm like qualified to do that, but like, if you help me, like I'm happy. And so I think that, that kind of like giving people that ownership, creating a culture of like allowing other people to keep things updated, but also making sure that somebody oversees, like to Christine's point, like sales leadership should be running that race and like kind of driving the train. Not, an SDR who like saw something and was like, I'm going to overhaul our onboarding process now. Like that's not the best way to do it.
I love that because it plays even to psychology that we both own it.
Oh, go for it, Christine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I think it's just around the idea that it should be standardized training. So I see some comments, I see like having, mentors and things. I'm going to slightly disagree there because I actually think mentor is there to support you in your growth and learning. But if we have everybody learning different ways, it's going to be very hard to know, is what we're teaching working? Are we actually supporting our customer? Are we supporting our product the right way? And if everybody has coming in learning different ways, that's going to be problematic down the path because we won't again know, are we teaching this well? Are we doing a good job of supporting people coming in, or is this an individual issue? And that makes it really complicated when it's all over the place. I do love the idea of worship and having someone guide you and be that person to kind of be your helper through different things, but believe to be some standardization in it.
I think that ties into our next question just so perfectly.
Yeah. Lou had asked a little bit ago, And this is to you, Christine, first. Like, which outcomes or KPIs are you focusing on when building the program for a new hire onboarding program? So for new hires specifically.
Just before you dive in, I just want to tell everybody, if there's somebody that needs this information, shoot them in the tag them in the comments, and so that way they can catch this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't have to do that, right? Because I don't know how to tag anything in the comments, right?
You're good.
Okay. All right. Cool. So, what I really like to look at is there is a combination of maybe it's an onboarding curriculum, or it's online, or there's some work, there's some demos, there's some different things that we have to do through the process, and that we would have some way to guide them through that so that we know that all of those pieces are being done. I like testing for competency throughout, so that you're able to say, all right, talk to me about if this lead came in, where would you go to do, actually having them show me and emulate the role throughout. So I like, we get some information, we maybe have them do online coursework, we discuss, and we have a facilitator that discusses. I'm also saying, are they doing homework? Are they doing things after hours to read more or learn more or be interested? And I'm not saying you have to, but also that shows me like your like how you think about learning, how you're thinking, like that you take. So I like a mixture of a kind of online training, doing some research, doing some homework, coming back, discussing, and being for competency throughout. So I would have very specific milestones that I would be looking for. Like at this point, I need them to have, been able to explain to me like our target ICP and this and that and blah, like a milestone. Check, they got that. Then next, can they do a demo for me within 10, 15 minutes based on a couple of pieces of information that I'm going to give them as I had a previous call? Because if you're going to just show me everything in the software, that is like the bane of my existence. No. So like, how do you demo me in the way that I need to be shown, just to validate that it can do it? Then we go to the next step. So I'm creating milestones along the way, and then I'm looking for those to be completed on time. And then as I transition them over to their leader, their manager, we'll be looking at different KPIs for them as they hit the floor.
I have a question. Do you tell the rep what all those KPIs are up front? Like, do they know what they're being measured on and what the milestones are?
Give them, I do. I like to give them an agenda so they know by for sales training, we're going to be doing these things and you're going to be tested for this. I think it's great to let them know, this is my expectation. You won't hit the floor. You won't hit the phones. You won't be authorized to do anything in Salesforce until you have completed those milestones.
I love that, because I think like as a rep, there's nothing more stressful when you're learning a new job than being in this sort of nebulous space of like, I don't know what the benchmark is. Like I'm trying my best, but like, what if I'm running, 3 degrees off course? If I get too far down the way, now I'm like very, very far off my target. So I think like sharing that up front, I have many a time in a new role been like in sort of a nebulous or like unclear spot, even as like an SDR, just like, I don't know what you need from me by what date, what does ramp mean? Like it just wasn't very structured or clarified. And so there was no way for me to tell the difference between like, so-and-so is crushing it and so-and-so is struggling. Like when on paper, I was like, honestly, they kind of look like they're doing the same things. So I love that idea of like coming up with sort of that agenda or checklist or, the milestones and sharing it with the person up front so that they have something to kind of pace against. I think it also gives, overachievers something to like kind of gun for and like try and like outpace or outdo, or like, can I do this faster? Can I do this better? Can I do it more? Especially for salespeople who not always, but often are pretty competitive and like to do that kind of thing. Like, I think that sets people up for success.
Well, and we used to always give an onboarding like notebook or, something that they were filling out and actually doing as well along with us so that they were able to take notes and do different things. I know there's lots of ways of doing, LMSs and different things, but there is something that a lot of people do like to be able to still write something down. And when you're learning, you want to kind of give a lot of ways for people to be learning, and obviously this is something that's important in my line of work. How people learn is all different. And so we actually did hand deliver. Everybody had a book and it was theirs. And then they knew what was coming. Why would we want to be surprising anyone on what we're going to expect? Like that doesn't make any sense. And so as the sales leader, I think it's our job to set the tone. So right away, I would say, this is yours. And you have got to own this experience as well. If you need more, if you're not understanding, these are going to be really important. Day one, first class was me setting the tone. Also, it allowed me to say, everybody that's going to be coming in here and teaching is taking time out of their day to teach you. So one of the things that I like to do is top performers teach the classes. And that was a great progression path for them, but also allowed the new reps to experience and meet some of the top performing people in the team and teach them about objection handling or go talk about how they negotiate certain types of things. And it would be facilitated by my enablement trainer. However, the actual content was pushed out by people that they actually want to be just like. So it was helpful to have, and some to say like, my expectation is if anybody comes back and tells me you weren't paying attention or you were on your phone or whatever, you and I are going to have a different kind of conversation. It's that important. We are taking expensive time to train you and make sure you are set up, and also asking others to invest their time in you, and they don't need you, and they're doing that. So I love that conversation, and I think it's super important again for the sales leader to set the tone and then work together. Nobody should be surprised by what's expected. Nobody should. They should all know what's expected and how to do it and how to show up.
I love that. I just love that. One thing I mean, this might get a little spicy, but I'm interested in your takes on this, which is, how do we think about the success of a new hire as a reflection of our hiring practice or a reflection of our onboarding program? Because one thing I see happen a lot is that companies will create a fairly robust, recruitment or hiring practice, and they'll, create whatever hiring thing, which isn't really the focus of today, and recruit XYZ candidate and then put them through an onboarding program. They get through the onboarding and then they don't perform as well. And is that as well as they would hope? So in your view, it's not, I don't think it's, it's probably both, but how do you think about aligning the hiring practices of an organization with the ways and the expectations of the onboarding process?
I've never hired anybody, so Christine, that one's you.
So I think about, so it's important. You can't say it's one or the other. I think it's a bit, but I will say that is why I do believe there should be a more intentional and program designed so that you are able to, as you bring new people in, set expectations for what they're going to be. You can tell, you have a sense of being able to tell if that's going to be workable, because you're seeing different types of people, different personality types coming in, and you're able to see okay, is everybody having a hard time with this concept, or is it one or the other? And then that allows us to be able to kind of get in and refine some things. And that's why I like that. And I also usually like to onboard 2 people at a time at least, so that we're able to see, oh, you know what, our process here might be a little wonky, and that's what we need to clean up, because they're both kind of lost, versus going, we did this and then something changed in the product, and then 2 months ago, and then we onboarded another one person in this role, and then 3 people in another role, all doing different things. I'm not sure what it is. And especially if you have multiple people, like the sales manager doing the onboarding, and then you got another sales manager doing another onboarding, I think it's very risky to be able to, was it how you hired them, or is it how you supported once they were in the building, or not in the building. I'm so used to that saying that, but once you're in the company.
I think that is like really, it reminds me of that phrase, like you can't manage what you don't measure. And so like making sure that you have systems in place to measure the effectiveness. And if we change 18 variables at once, that's like not a great way to do an experiment. But like your question, Morgan, kind of made me think about something we talked about in the pre-show about like why should anybody care about onboarding at all? And like, does it really make a difference? And there's some interesting stats, like some research that Glassdoor did about, like robust onboarding process, and essentially like having a robust onboarding process versus not. Employees self-reported 82% higher that they were more likely to stay, as well as statistically, the employees with like the better onboarding experience, those companies reported, 70% higher productivity based on like whatever they were using to measure that. So onboarding not only helps you be good at your job, but also helps you feel like confident in your role and at your company. However, Gallup did run a survey, and statistically speaking, only 12% of people feel like their companies have a good onboarding program. So there's a big delta that we need to close in terms of like how employees are perceiving onboarding programs. Like, are they designed for them? Like we clearly have room to improve the way that we teach and learn at work. But I mean, I think like the most interesting stat for me, and why I think onboarding programs need to be more than just like 3 days, hit the phones, good luck, like is 90% of employees will make a decision about their longevity at a company in the first 6 months that they're there. That's like a pretty well-known stat. Like within 6 months, I've decided whether or not I'm going to dip or I'm going to be here for like 4 or 5 years. And a lot of people will say, even in retrospect, like they knew in that first 6 months that this wasn't a good fit, even if they wait another year to leave. So that said, like if you've got 6 months to win that trust, like why aren't you maximizing that time and helping people feel really confident in their job and helping them win? Like people who aren't winning aren't having fun, they aren't enjoying their job. So like how are you setting up things like Christine said, like milestones where people can like check boxes and be like, yep, I did that, I nailed that, I'm on to the next thing, I feel like I'm growing, even if we are artificially putting those things in place, just so that people can like stop and recognize. Because I could probably tell you back when I was an SDR, like I can look back and pinpoint a bunch of moments where I grew and where I learned. But at the time, I just felt like I was drowning. And if there was something put in place for me to like measure, like, oh, I hit this goal, or I hit this KPI, or I hit this metric, how much different would I have felt about that experience? And like, I probably would have walked away from that. Yeah, I learned a ton. I would never want to go back and do that job again because of that experience. So I think like really how you do onboarding is going to affect how long or how effective or productive an employee is during their entire tenure.
I think it's really interesting.
Well, and if you think about it, this is exactly how we. God, I'm so sorry. It's so
okay.
Okay. So one thing, because I love what you just said. So it's just like the way we sell. It's the sell. You're being sold an opportunity. Like when you come into a company, you're being sold this opportunity. And it's just the same way we bring customers on. They get into onboarding and implementation, and there's, did I make the right choice? That is what happens to our employees. They're saying, did I make the right choice? So the way we would think about treating customers and being with customers and the success of our customers, it's that same thing that you're talking about. It makes great sense that that's how we live.
Nick?
Yeah. I was listening to both you guys go back and forth. One of the things that surprised me in the last little while is we learn differently, not just by like audio, visual, but we actually learn differently based on cues. And it was the most fascinating thing that we had come across. And it was called tacit knowledge. And basically, Morgan's favorite sentence, it depends. And it's all based it's all based on pattern recognition. But I like how, Christine, you're talking about running tests. Well, these tests are doing role plays where you're giving them guidance and they're going to pick up on cues. So what made them make that change? What did they see that changed their questioning? What happened? What did they notice about body language, facial expression, or what did you tell them in that description that made them change course? And now the end result that they're going for is now different. But all too often we get taught sales like it's science or math, and these are the principles. If you follow the principles, you're great. That doesn't work in real life.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting to see how we're evolving the way we train to go and have both the stuff that we can have principles, but also incorporating we're human. We need to see this done in real life. And we also love to mimic. And so like you're saying, the best teach the rest. That is such a game changer. And like you said too, like, wow, this person's doing really well. I'm learning from somebody that's doing really well. Like that would have made such a big difference in the start of my career. Actually, even now.
I mean, when was the last time you like sat through a 3-hour lecture and like really retained anything? You know, like we're battling the forgetting curve. Statistically speaking, 70% of learning happens on the job. So when you can introduce like top reps teaching me while I'm on the floor, while I'm in the tool, and I can actually learn their process, that's going to stick a lot better. It makes the learning literally stickier. Like even Christine talking about like having like an actual notebook to write things down, like the act of doing things helps us remember and battle that forgetting curve. And then continuous reinforcement of that learning is really important too. Like a one and done learning solution is just not the way that we learn today. I mean, I'm on TikTok just surpassed Google as like the #1 search engine. I literally TikTok how to do anything. And it's a 14-second reel, step by step. I know how to do it. I'll go back and reference it once or twice more to make sure that I know it. I just like made this weird art thing the other day from watching a TikTok video. It was awesome. And now I know how to do it because I've done it and I like watched the video while I was doing it. And all of that. So I just think like shifting from that old way of like, go sit through a week worth of video trainings and then like good luck is just not going to cut it anymore. Like having more interactive training, having training while you're in the tools, having training on the job, having training with your peers so that your peers can like reinforce the learning that they have. I learn so well when I teach someone else a thing that I kind of know, and have somebody else with me to make sure that I'm not teaching them something wrong. But like that sort of idea of like see one, do one, teach one, and it kind of reinforcing that concept in your brain. I feel way more confident about like my expertise or things that I feel like I have expertise in because I've taught it and I've seen someone else replicate the success. And I'm like, okay, like I know that I know that this works because I saw somebody else do it who I taught how to do it. So like I'm on the right path. And I think that's really important too.
And I also think of just like how that has changed in the remote environment and how much like remote sales has changed the learning approaches or because I mean, as not a seller, but as somebody who even did agency life, like even as a creative, not being able to sit next to somebody, see their design process, just brainstorm with them ad hoc on a client or whatever, like that's very different in a remote era where it's sort of very intentional and gated. It's like, okay, hey, what's the Zoom link? Hey, okay, do you have 15 minutes on this side? Okay, hey, can we jump into the blah, 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 all down the road? And it's so less fluid. So how do you both think about scaling this in a remote environment where sellers aren't necessarily in person, or if they are in person, chances are most of their team isn't in the same place, or it's a hybrid situation, and so they don't get the same exposure than they might have in 2019 even?
Who will go first?
So I think that you can at least do, even if you're watching a video. So our coursework is, very much online. And you could even at the very basics, let's say you had nothing to be able to find useful. You could say to your team, here's 3 things I want you to watch, I want you to read, and we're going to discuss them this time on Wednesday. You could still have a discussion and you could still have a top performer or somebody on the team complete it and be a part as well. So I thought in general, we can still make that happen. happen. And we don't need everybody to be exactly the same. But one of the other unintentional, really interesting things that happens when you have sales people on the floor, other team members, especially top performers, come in, is the new people get excited by it. Also, the top performers are enthusiastic about the new people coming in. So you get a chance, because they go back onto Slack and they're like, all right, cool, I just did a training. I actually really like her. She was really cool. And that other guy, he was cool. Like, we had a great discussion. And there's to be some positive types that are going on in the team, just because more people are getting to know the new people. Because if you're anything like me, or you've seen this before, where it's like they hire new people and everybody is going, we'll see, and so if you can find a way to also help that's great too.
Zoe, how about you for remote?
I mean, again, it feels like a cheat because our product literally solves for this, and I don't want to sit here and be pitching spec it for 10 minutes, but I do think just any way you can bake in that reinforcement of learning in the tools or products that you're using, as well as we do a buddy program for all of our sales reps. So every sales rep gets a more senior sales rep as a buddy, and they're checking in daily. And it's just trying to.
Oh no, we lost Zoe.
It's a weird thing today.
Yeah.
The tech gremlins are with us. While we wait for Zoe, I hope she's still here.
Yeah.
Safe actually had a really interesting question, and I know, Christine, we sort of talked about this previously. Safe had asked, should our goal be to just clone our top reps, or is there any room for diversity and creativity in different approaches? What a great question.
That's a fantastic question.
Okay, so top reps, I think I've used that term loosely. I don't just mean that they're at the top of the stacks. I just mean there could be a lot of different things here. The people that often teach are not often the top reps, right? Your A+ top performers always at the top of the stacks sometimes are not the best. So we also want to help them learn how to do that if that's something that they want to do as well. I absolutely think that you can have a frame and foundational, kind of understanding, right, of what's going to happen. And also you can allow for some creativity and diversity of thought. So there are a lot of ways to say, a specific phrase. And a lot of reps will say well, this is how I ask that question. This is this flavor of this question. This works better with my personality. This is how I, get to the same answers. And I love that. That's a part of what makes us authentically us, and we should lean into that. I definitely don't think that we would want to have everybody be the same. But I do think we all need to have the same understanding of our customer, our prospect. We need to understand, our product, and we really do need to understand, what is the motion? How are we getting, everything uncovered that we need in order to be able to position our solution as a valuable solution and allow them to make that decision. So I think there's some flexibility in there as far as how we communicate, how we ask questions, what we do, what that looks like, but also that framework is there, I think is really, really important.
I love that answer too, because I even think about the sales teams we work with, and it's even when I think sellers are sort of maybe over invested in creating one channel to perform really well. Like, how do I do the best at the phones? How do I do the best at email or whatever? But even within that, there's so many varied approaches, right? Like people tackle the phone very differently, even in the same company, even in the same industry vertical, even selling to the same persona. That people's individual flares, I just totally resonated with me, where it's that sort of training should be encouraged, because sometimes that different approach resonates a little differently, or it's more authentic or more personal to the exact person who's actually trying to sell. But I also I don't know, I still like we have the shared foundation, and we shouldn't forget, that doesn't mean the foundation should just go out the window and they're, sort of thing. That's good. Zoe is rejoining us in just a second, just for everyone. Tech gremlins. Nick?
Gosh.
I think this is really interesting because I think back to my bullpen days, and I don't think I would be the seller I am without the bullpen, because
Yeah.
there were some incredible sellers that I learned by being around them, by
Mhm.
hearing how they picked up the phone, by hearing how they dealt with objections, hearing how they pitched the product or the problem, because I wasn't articulating it that way. But
Yeah.
it was almost that reverse engineering of being in that environment. And I think once you learn the basics, you have the base, it's really good to hear where everybody else is winning. Just so it's like reading sales books. Half of them are garbage, but you're going to pick up one or two things from them.
Yeah.
And that's how we learn, right? I think the moment that we try to go and put something that it's like we only go A to Z this way, anything else is wrong, is the moment we start losing reps, because good people think for themselves. And if we help them
Mm.
through that mental process, that helping them build that mental model, that is where we get all-stars that want to stay, not running away.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, we used to call it ear hustling. You're not even knowing you're hearing it, but you're hearing it, and I was talking to a leader not that long ago, and he has a fully remote team. And I was like, man, I mean, how are you doing? Are you having them listen to each other's calls? What are you doing? I always think it's great to do, call breakdowns together. So everybody's like, all right, we're going to listen to 8 minutes of so-and-so's call. Let's all do it together. I used to do these like lunch and learn, like call calibrations once a week. And we would, at first, nobody wanted me to pick their call. And then after a while, everybody was like, pick my call, because they wanted the breakdown. Everybody wanted to hear, what we were going to do. So there's ways of doing this that are still workable and that you can do. This guy that I was talking to, he said, you know what we do? We do a power hour, just like we used to when we would be on the floor. And I said, tell me how you do it. He said, we all come in the same Zoom room. And what we do is everybody turns the volume down a little bit, but we're all calling. When one of us gets on the call, we unmute. So we just are listening. And so other people hear it in the background if they're still dialing. And it's not really, they're still hearing some things. And so then they are able to do that. I thought that was super interesting. And it can get a little chaotic, but also like they're still enjoying some of that, and they liked it. So he would do call blocks that would be, power hours. He would do like 2-hour call blocks where that's what they would do. And anybody who's like, I got a good one, this is a good call, like they would unmute. And so then others could hear it. And I just really like that.
The 2-hour power hour again.
Yeah. It's this running joke around here where Nick's power hours are always 2 hours long instead of 1. But the other thing that doesn't escape me here, which is, and this sort of folds in neatly with what you were previously mentioning and what Zoe had previously mentioned, Christine, which is that a lot of this falls on sales leadership to figure out what works right for their team in their company and in their industry. Yeah. And I feel so often it's not that they're not doing their job, because that's not true, and it's sort of mean, but it does feel from all of the individual sellers that there's like this vacuum where they've gotten some of the foundations, but maybe there's not all of this additional, frankly, culture building on top of the fundamentals of just doing sales day in and day out, which is really meaningful to me to hear. Because I think a lot of sales leaders, if at least the way it's been articulated today, it's not just about continuing to train. It's building that culture. It's creating that environment that people want to stick around in and have a good time and make a career out of. And that requires more than just 3 days of training and we'll let you loose into the wild.
Yeah. And I think it's just like anything else, we need to spend time and incentivize the behaviors that we're looking for in all, like as sales leaders, we do this naturally. Somehow we forget it a little bit in the onboarding. So we need to look at how are we rewarding behavior and creating fun and excitement? What can we do that, so I will tell you, like I found that, early on when we would start training, they would be less excited at the beginning and kind of a little bit drowsy around training, right? And so actually what I did start to do is like day 2, I did pull up some really old leads. I gave them like, all right, here's some talk tracks. I'm going to let you go ahead and hop on the phones for 30 minutes each. And if any of you can tee up a lead for one of my reps, I'll give you $500. And I put a big, and they were like, oh, also it scared them to death and they listened. Because when they were like, oh, I got people on the phone, I was really excited to get on the phones, but also they didn't know anything. So, kind of that nature of like, just let me on the phones. I already know what I'm doing, or I'm excited, or I took these trainings and now I feel like I can do this. It actually worked really well to like, all right, we'll let you get on the phones for a little bit. Here's how you tee up that conversation. If you can do it, we're going to give you something super great. But also what it taught them is like immediately they were humbled by like, this is hard and I do need to pay attention. I'm going to listen. And how can you create fun, excitement, driving the behaviors that you're wanting? Also, allowing them to, kind of lean in to this new exciting job that they're very excited about, but also be humble enough to be a good learner and to be grateful and appreciative of the work that's going in to make sure they have a good foundation.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Well, we're at the end of the hour somehow.
Yeah.
I know. And I lost my girl with me. Oh my.
Zoe, we love you, Zoe.
We love you,
this
Zoe.
is great. Nick, you want to close this out? Sorry.
Yeah. So it's 2022. It is no longer okay for us to suffer in silence. If you're in sales, marketing, customer success, and you're struggling right now, you have access to LinkedIn. You have access to YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Ask for help. You don't need to buy anything. Reach out to Morgan and me, Christine.
Yeah.
Get in the comments. We are here to help you, and we put these shows on for you. So please get in the comments, ask those hard questions that you need answered, and we want to support you. And if you're looking to break into tech, where should you go, Christine?
You can come over. We'll help you at aspireship.com. We have foundational coursework for both sales and customer success. And we are helping teams. So this is, some teams use this for their onboarding, as well as hire great people that have already gone through it from us. So we're kind of our enablement and training meets recruiting. And also for those companies that are hiring and realize like, ooh, we actually don't have what we need in order to support this or in order to have continued education. We have that as well. So so we're here to help.
Yeah, we got Zoe here to go close out as well.
Wow.
Maybe?
Oh my goodness. Wait, can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Wait.
Just in time.
Test it well and see it's not even working very well. You can still hear me though?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. What am I closing out? Sorry, I missed so much.
where can people find you? And if they need a little enablement help, where can they go?
I mean, I wouldn't recommend that people find me, but I would say I am on LinkedIn and go like for enablement help. I actually think that there are some great human beings that work at Speckit who are kind of experts in sort of the learning and development and enablement space. So people like Andrea Rist, also big fan of what Patek Hawkins is doing on LinkedIn in the enablement space. Women in Sales Enablement Wise is a community you should check out. But yeah, I'm a big believer in onboarding. If you ever have any questions or just want to bounce ideas off of somebody, I'm usually quite available in the DMs. So feel free to hit me up.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming to this edition of the B2B Power Hour.
Look forward to seeing everyone next week.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.